Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating concept. We're looking at a source that constructs an imaginary conversation between five iconic literary figures. And honestly, these aren't just any figures. These are literature's most restless young voices, all pulling up a chair together trying to figure out how to actually grow up without becoming utterly fake. It's this profound, deep dive exploration of guilt, humor, grace, and, well, what it really means to be human.
So let's dive right in. Picture this in your mind. It's late at night in a quiet Chicago diner. The only sounds you hear are the hum of a refrigerator and spoons clinking against glass. You've got melted ice cream on the table, cold coffee, and five young men just sitting around. Now, each of them is carrying a different kind of psychological or spiritual wound, and they are desperately trying to figure out what it means to be truly, unapologetically honest in a world that, frankly, often rewards us for pretending. And check out the cast of characters we're dealing with. These guys aren't just random names pulled from your high school reading list. They're literal avatars for entirely different ways of seeing the world. We've got Tim Conroy, bringing in this confusion shaped by Catholic guilt and personal failure. Then there's Holden Caulfield, famously carrying a sharp disgust toward anything he considers phony. Dedalus is there, wrestling with immense intellectual and religious pressure. Huckleberry Finn, who completely ignores society's rules to just trust his simple internal moral compass. And finally, Alyosha Karamazov, holding down this steady, quiet faith that's deeply rooted in compassion. Put them together and you get the ultimate clash of ideologies. Which brings us to Act 1, the weight of the world, fakeness, fear, and real conscience. Right out of the gate in this first segment, our characters confront the heavy, systematic pressures that society, family, and organized religion just pile onto young minds. Holden immediately calls out the trap. He highlights that lonely, everyday struggle we all face against small lies and societal compromises. The source text points out how incredibly easy it is to just slip into saying things you don't even believe to people you don't even like. For Holden, it's an inescapable binary. You either assimilate and become a phony, or you resist and get completely crushed by the weight of the world. But then Alyosha steps in with this gentle yet totally powerful counterpoint. He argues that isolation just isn't the answer. You can't just run away from society. The goal isn't to refuse to participate in the world, but rather to participate without betraying what you know in your gut to be true. He suggests the real defense against becoming fake isn't hiding. It's simply choosing again and again to refuse the small lies. So what does this all boil down to? It's the crucial difference between imposed fear and a true conscience. Dedalus points out that imposed fear is systematic. It measures and judges you before you even make a move, which ultimately leads a person straight to despair or just emotional numbness. By contrast, Alyosha defines a real conscience as something that doesn't just point a finger and leave you feeling terrible. Actually, it invites you forward. It moves you to repair the damage and become a more honest person. And then, Huck Finn drops this absolute gem into the conversation, reminding everyone of a profound truth. He brings up his decision to help Jim escape slavery, an act that society back then told him was a mortal sin that would send him straight to hell. And sometimes following your authentic internal moral compass feels like a complete, total rebellion against what the external world dictates as right. But as Huck notes, choosing hell felt better. It left him feeling straighter inside. This perfectly captures the big breakthrough of Act 1. Instead of letting guilt trap you inside your own head, terrified of stepping out of line, this explainer shows how a true conscience actually acts as an invitation. It calls you to action. It asks the hard question. Does your guilt make you hide, or does it move you from hiding to actually caring for others? Moving on to Act 2, the shields we carry. Humor as a defense against pain. So as the imaginary waitress drops an upside-down check on their table, bringing a much-needed dose of reality to their deep philosophical talk, the group uncovers that humor is actually incredibly complex. They start talking about how we use jokes to survive immense emotional pressure. Dedalus notes it can be a form of rebellion in disguise. Holden, naturally, sees it mostly as disgust and evasion. Tim Conroy, in this moment of brilliant self-awareness, calls it panic with better timing. But Alyosha introduces a beautiful concept. Humor can also be a profound form of mercy. It's a way to let a wounded person finally catch their breath. Now, the source material draws a really stark contrast for us here. Laughter without love, as Holden points out, is just cruelty disguised as a joke. It's an evasion where the target basically disappears inside themselves. But laughter with love, that acts as a shelter. It warms the room. It absolutely doesn't deny that pain exists, but it outright refuses to let pain be the entire story of a person's life. And then Tim drops this incredibly vulnerable line right in the middle of the diner. It shows how a simple joke can accidentally open a door for the real truth to just walk right through. He realizes that his humor isn't just an evasion, it's a shield against his own deep-seated fears of failure and judgment. Let's head into our final section, Act 3, The Grace We Find, Redefining the Divine and Ordinary Sins.
As the night wears on, the guys debate replacing the terrifying god of surveillance they were all raised with for a much kinder image. They contrast this policeman god, the one who relies on fear, severity, and keeping score, with a god that acts more like a father who grieves the wounds of his children. They basically neuter the anxiety of theology by asking a huge question. Does true spiritual healing mean teaching your body and your nervous system not to live in perpetual terror of the divine?
Which actually brings us to the title of this explainer. Tim introduces this memorable, slightly absurd, but honestly beautiful concept of the ice cream god. It's a metaphor, right? It's not about a soft or naive deity, but rather a divine presence that can handle ordinary human flaws without immediate disgust. It's the whole idea of a god who isn't offended by simple, everyday happiness, and who could sit right there in that diner with 5 messed up guys and just be with them.
But here's the catch. This reveals the real challenge of this new way of thinking. Tim realizes that this scary god is actually the easier one to deal with. Think about it. If God is just a terrifying punisher, you can stay a child. You just obey out of fear, confess, and repeat. But a truly loving God, that is way harder to face. Because a loving God demands genuine growth. They actually expect you to become an honest, mature adult. As the diner clears out around them, they have to confront the reality of their own failures. They realize the true humiliation isn't found in some grand, dramatic, biblical fall from grace. No. It's the realization of being an ordinary sinner. Most of the time, our sins are just boring, repetitive, small moments of cowardice. It's selfishness or just choosing a comfortable lie over a really uncomfortable truth. So Alyosha steps in to redefine grace for the group. It is absolutely not a free pass to be morally lazy or pretending that the harm we do isn't real. Far from it. Rather, grace is a calling back. It's the profound responsibility to return, again and again, after you've caused harm, and to consciously make the choice to become less cruel and more capable of love.
And, of course, leave it to Holden to cut right to the cynic's truth here. He highlights the incredibly difficult friction between wanting mercy and actually doing the hard, grinding work required to change our behavior. Because it's one thing to receive forgiveness, right? It is an entirely different mountain to climb to actually change the habits that required forgiving in the first place. Suddenly, this huge, high-level concept of grace gets grounded in the real physical world of the diner. The tired waitress walks by and, without even being asked, pours Tim extra coffee he doesn't need. It's this tiny, unnecessary moment of surplus kindness. Tim points out that, hey, maybe this is exactly what grace is. A gift given simply beyond what the world strictly demands or requires. Let's wrap things up and review the crucial takeaways from our time at the diner. The source material shows us that growing up is never, ever about achieving a state of flawlessness. It's about developing the honesty to recognize when we're being fake. We learn that guilt is basically a fork in the road. It can trap us in fear, or it can guide us back to connection and love. Ultimately, it's the small, steady acts of truth and surplus kindness that manage to keep us human. I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought from the diner table. We might all be ordinary sinners, failing in repetitive, boring ways, but we always have the choice not to be ordinary cowards. We can choose not to hide. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this changes how you view your own small choices today.